Hi guys, and welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty room for all things Formula 1. And it was of course the Istanbul Grand Prix this weekend, a return to Turkey, and what a fantastic few sessions we have. An exciting qualifying session, an exciting race. The weather conditions really helped make the drama more exciting than what it would have potentially been in the dry. And of course the new asphalt circuit that they laid down, releasing all that beautiful juicy goodness that was causing the cars to slip and slide everywhere. It really showed the men from the boys, and without a doubt the cream rose to the top, didn't it? Let's just say that. Fantastic drives throughout the field, and we're going to review them in due course. So as always, if you've never seen this series before, I score the drivers out of a maximum of 10 points if they've had a really good weekend, and all the way down to 0 for a particularly bad weekend. Bonus points can be awarded, as can minus points. Get ready for both of those during this recording. So of course we're going to kick things off with the race winner, Lewis Hamilton. Wow. Now let's put it this way. We saw qualifying. The Mercedes were down in 6th and 9th. You think, God, they're crap. In the race, it started out looking incredibly bad for the Mercedes. He got up there at the start, didn't he, Hamilton, up to around 4th. Then tumbled back down again because the car was just struggling in those really wet conditions, slipping and sliding all over the place. When it sort of got to that dryish patch where the intermediate tyres weren't the right tyre but they weren't the wrong tyre either, and it was too risky to go on slicks, Hamilton came into his own. Mercedes elected not to pit him and said, look, just stay out on those and chew those to pieces, and they virtually became slicks by the end anyway. Then of course after they'd worn the tread out. But he just drove phenomenally, didn't he? He just drove phenomenally. He turned that race around from something that was looking like if he'd got a top 5, it'd have been a good race, and he ended up winning in it. So absolutely fantastic masterclass strategy there by Mercedes to not pit him like other teams did, and fantastic driving for him to get 30 seconds ahead of Sergio Perez, who was doing the same strategy. Absolutely masterclass. Yeah, can't fault it. And of course, congratulations as well to him winning the 7th world title, joint equal now with Michael Schumacher. Yeah, a brilliant race. And that proved why he's a 7-time world champion, didn't it? It really did. So fantastic stuff by Lewis Hamilton. And it's going to be massive bonus points for Lewis Hamilton, and I'll break it down in a second, but it's going to be 20 points. 20 points for Lewis Hamilton. And it's going to be 15 for the race because that was phenomenal. The qualifying session, him down in 6th, I don't think it was his fault as such. I just don't think the car had the pace, and that was probably the best he could have done, so fair play for that. And then the race was masterclass. So it's 15 points for that, and I'm awarding him an additional 5 bonus points because I was particularly harsh on him earlier in the season, Belgium most notably, where I just had a bit of a tit on with Mercedes and scored him 0. So I'm making up for that. So it's going to be 15 points for the race and 5 bonus points for me being a dick earlier in the year. So massive congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. A fantastic, phenomenal win, and what better way to win your 7th world title than a dominant drive like that, proving why you are a champion. Fantastic stuff. Next up is Sergio Perez finishing 2nd on the road after qualifying 3rd. A fantastic effort by those B-Tech Mercedes there in qualifying. And yeah, they beat the main Mercedes guys, didn't they? So phenomenal qualifying. And then in the race, got up into 1-2 for the team. Stroll had pissed off into the distance though, hadn't it? But then they put Stroll on a different strategy to Perez. It didn't work out for Stroll, but it worked out for Sergio Perez, and he managed to net a 2nd place. Nothing could stop Hamilton from charging his way through, and he'd have got past him with DRS or not. So people saying DRS made the overtake easy for Hamilton, bullshit. It'd have got round him anyway. But yeah, fantastic drive for Sergio Perez. A faultless race really by the pair of the racing points, to be honest, but as mentioned, it didn't work out for Stroll. We'll get to him in a moment. But for Sergio Perez, short and sweet, it's going to be 12 points. It's a fantastic qualifying effort. It's a fantastic race. Just a shame he didn't line it up 1-2 for the racing points, wasn't it? Just a tad there, but I'm not taking anything away. It's 10 points plus 2 bonus points. It's 12 points. Fantastic effort, Sergio Perez, and thoroughly, thoroughly deserved. Then it's time for Sebastian Vettel. Is he really this high up? Has he having a nosebleed? My God, what a drive by him. What a drive. Fantastic, fantastic effort by Sebastian Vettel there. Phenomenal, phenomenal stuff. I'm so pleased for him. It was good to see him on the podium again. He was running around in 4th though, of course, let's not forget. But then the last couple of corners, Leclerc lunged it up the inside of Perez. He went wide, he went back behind Perez and then behind Vettel, and that's what got Vettel in the podium places, but I don't care. I don't care how he got it. He thoroughly deserved that, and he drove a fantastic race. He was one of the first to go onto that option of pitting for a second time to go on the Freshetta Inters, and it worked for him, whereas it didn't work for other drivers. So a fantastic race, and I'm so pleased to see Vettel on the podium again, and I think that's a couple of two fingers up to Ferrari there. I think he's finally realised, I'm doing it for me, and he's done it for him, and a phenomenal effort there. And of course, with the Ferraris getting the results that they got, that puts them massively ahead of AlphaTauri now, so they're safe for 6th in the Constructors, which is little consolation, I know, but at least it was a good weekend in that sense, as well as Vettel's own personal win. So yeah, a podium for Vettel. It's going to be 12 points. Out-qualified Leclerc, fantastic effort, and out-raced him, really. Just out-raced him. At the latter stage, obviously Leclerc was ahead, but Leclerc made the mistake. Vettel nipped through. Thank you very much. Wham bam, thank you bam. Then, as mentioned, in 4th place, of course, is Charles. It's Charles Leclerc, of course, and what could be said for his race? It was looking so promising, wasn't it? He was carving his way through the field, very much like Ferrari's Vettel was as well. You know, the two Ferraris were battling through and doing moves and making places up where no one else could. So, a fantastic effort by the pair of Ferraris, and I probably think that's their biggest points all this year, isn't it? A 3rd and a 4th. But yeah, Leclerc, it was going all right for him, wasn't it? It was on putting massive pressure in the closing laps to Sergio Perez. Perez made a mistake at turn 9 and went a little bit wide, which I think caught Leclerc off there a little bit, because I think Leclerc was trying to hope of just getting him down the straight going into the final corners, but instead they ended up side by side. And yeah, he sort of made the move and then didn't, and then he locked his front right up, I think it was, and just went straight on, sailed straight on. Perez nipped back through, Vettel nipped through as well, so he went from 2nd to 4th in a click of a finger. Such a shame to see, but nonetheless a good drive by Leclerc. And as much as I want to try and be harsh to Leclerc for that mistake, I don't think I can be, because he provided so much entertainment and excitement in the race. He was outraced by Vettel right at the end there, and he was of course out-qualified by Vettel. So for that reason, it's going to be 10 points. It deserves a solid 10. We've given a couple of bonus points to Vettel. Had it been Leclerc on the podium, I'd have given him a couple of bonus points. So he's lost out a little bit there. But, you know, fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from Leclerc, because he provided, like I said, so much excitement and entertainment. Then we come to Carlos Sainz, and what could be said for his race weekend? The McLarens didn't have it at all, did they, in qualifying? They were down in 12th and 13th, I think it was, and then one got a 5-place penalty, one got a 3-place grid penalty for yellow flags and blocking. So that was all a bit of a shame. And then in the race, they just sort of came alive, didn't they? The early part of the race, they didn't really make that many places up, but then later on in the stages, they were just carving their way through the fields, pretty much like Ferrari, but unfortunately they did it a little bit later. So, yeah, a fantastic P5 finish for Carlos Sainz in the McLaren there, because I was really thinking that, right, we've got the racing points up at the front there, we've got the Renaults up there. I think McLaren could slip to 5th in the Constructors now, and I'm not sure what the points are at the time of recording, but damage limitation definitely from McLaren, and Renault picked up just the 1. So they've gone from, in my mind, of going, right, the 5th in Constructors here, to, you know, doing a fantastic job and recovering what they could get. So they'll definitely be 4th in the Constructors now with Perez's podium for Racing Point, but yeah, nonetheless, damage limitation, I think they'll go away after their qualifying session, and then the penalties on top. With a 5th place finish for Carlos Sainz, they'll be more than happy with that. 10 points on the board, and he drove a superb race. So the only reason I'm going to dock him points is because of the penalty. He did impede Perez, of course, so I don't think it warrants a perfect 10. They made hard work for themselves, the McLarens. They certainly did. So for that reason, it's going to be 8 points. Then we come to Max Verstappen, finishing P6. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Tricky one. Well, it isn't really. I think it was shy, to be honest with you. I think that was a poor performance. What could be said? He qualified 2nd. Red Bull got that wrong by putting him on the Inters. I've got no doubt about that. I'm not blaming him for not getting pole. 2nd on the grid. You think, right, rocket ship start, off in the lead and piss off in the distance. That's all he had to do. Bogged down at the start, as did Albon as well, so maybe something wrong with the launches of the cars, not too sure. But it's funny how both did it and no one else did, so I'm not too sure on that. But nonetheless, slipped down the order, then carved his way back through, and then tried a silly move on Perez, and it just went all wrong, didn't it? I was like, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? And he spun, and then he flat spotted his inters, and then he had to pit it, and then he had to pit again. And yeah, 6th place, yeah, fantastic recovery, you could say. But what it could have been was so much more, and it should have been the win. It should have been the win. It was really going to be the only one that was going to stop Hamilton's dominance this weekend after he got it all together, because Max is known for being so good in the wet. And he proved it in qualifying, he proved it in all the practice sessions. Then in the race, he just got hot-headed again, like we've seen so many years previous. And I thought it was out of him now. But trying to make a silly move where he did it at turn 10 was like, what are you doing? No one can get up the inside of that. It's a quick kink, right? And there's one sort of dry line there. And yeah, he cost himself. He was lucky to keep going. That was luck more than judgment. And he was lucky not to get T-boned. And then in the end, he was lucky to get 6th place. So for that reason, it's going to be 4 points for Max Verstappen. I was disappointed in him. I think there should have been a win on the cards there at least. If the race had not come his way and Red Bull had got the strategy wrong, he should have still been on the podium, in my personal opinion. After seeing what the Ferraris could do and what Sainz did, and obviously what Hamilton and Perez did up front. So yeah, there was options there, and Verstappen, you should have been up in that podium positions at least. So yeah, poor race for Verstappen, just 4 points. And then we come to the curious case of Alexander Albon, probably the closest he's been to a teammate this year. Yeah, what could be said for Alex? 4th in qualifying was okay. You know, it was probably his best qualifying of the year, or equal best at least. It was all right, wasn't it? It was looking like he was on for a podium at one stage, and then he was catching up the racing points, like, oh, it could be on for a win. Didn't get round the racing points, sadly, and then that's when Hamilton and the likes caught up behind. He made the extra stop for the intermediate tyres, as did so many others, and just couldn't make them work. Very much like what Stroll did, just couldn't make those inters work. He then had a spin or a half spin at turn 4, which wasn't ideal, cost him a lot of time there. And as a result of that, came out behind the likes of Vettel and things like that. And then he just sort of slipped away, didn't he? And then there was only really his teammate to battle with. And Verstappen had another spin behind him, but then caught up again and then re-overtook. So he finished 7th in the end. So yeah, Albon, a case of what could have been. And I think he did a better job than Verstappen overall, considering where the gap comparison is normally between those two drivers. The fact that Verstappen only just got ahead of him, yeah, a bit poor race from Verstappen standards. Albon wasn't fantastic, however, but I think it was more encouraging. So for that reason, I'm going to score Alexander Albon 6 points. By no way staggering, and I know he finished behind Verstappen, but overall, throughout most of this race, he was better than him. It was just the latter half of the weekend and the latter half of the race where he couldn't get it together, could he, on those intermediate tyres. So yeah, there you go. 6 points to Alex Albon. And then we come to Lando Norris, and yeah, he was one of the McLarens, wasn't he? Poor qualifying, then a penalty compounded on top, but a good recovery to get it up into 8th place in the end to pick up a crucial 4 points. And as I mentioned with Sainz, damage limitation towards Racing Point, and of course keeping ahead of Renault there. Again, a good race by him, a solid race, a solid performance to get through the field and pick up those points. And yeah, overall it was just a decent race by him, wasn't it? A decent race. So, short and sweet, I'm going to score him 8 points as well. I know he was a few places behind Sainz, but it was so much chaos and carnage in that race. I couldn't quite work out what was happening. I mean, Grosjean retired. I didn't even see that. So yeah, it was that much chaos going off. I think Sainz did the better job overall, but I'm not sure exactly the laps that Lando pitted, and it could have had traffic. I'm not 100% sure what happened there, but I think both McLaren drivers recovered from a poor qualifying performance, and it's going to be 8 points on the board for Lando Norris as well. Yeah, worthy effort, and well done to Lando there. Fantastic stuff to get those 4 points. And then in 9th place, it's Lance Stroll, the pole man of the weekend. He did a fantastic job, didn't he? Let's just put that there. You know, he deserved that pole position. He did amazingly well. Perez could have beat him, but spun on his hot lap, his final hot flying lap, and of course had to pit. And Verstappen on the inters didn't have an answer for him. A worthy pole position. In the race, he was leading. He was up, he was 10 seconds up the road at some points within the race, and that was fantastic to see. And I'm not a Stroll lover by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, when credit where credit's due, fantastic effort by him. And he pitted for the inters. He didn't want to. You actually had a radio message, didn't you, and said, Lance, pit for no inters. He's like, why? But in the end, he had to concede, and he did pit. But then after they pitted him, they realised it was the wrong decision and then kept Perez out there and didn't pit him. Had they not pitted him, where could he have been? It'd have been another podium, wouldn't it? It looked like towards the end there, when they pitted Stroll, Perez was catching up, so potentially it would have been Hamilton, Perez, then Stroll, but I certainly think it would have been top 5 at least with the tyres. But when he pitted onto those new intermediate tyres, they just didn't work out for him at all, did they? Graining after just one lap and not being able to drive through that graining phase to do anything about the cars that were passing him. So, such a shame for that. This is probably going to be a cruel-ish score for him, but I'm going to award him 7 points. I know it was more of a team error to pit him on those inters, and he did say he didn't want them, but they did anyway. But I just think that he should have just kept his calm. I think he lost his head potentially, and that maybe didn't help the graining phase or help him improve and defend positions, because as soon as he came out of the pits, I think he realised he'd lost the win, and then it lost his head from there. So potentially a cruel 7 points there, because I'm just surmising what was maybe going on in his head, but I don't think I'm too far from the truth there. You think you're throwing away your potential first win and a lot of points paying positions, you know. I can imagine it's hard on a driver, and I think fairly quickly he'd have realised he'd lost it as well. So, yeah, that's why I'm giving him 7. You know, I don't take anything away from what he did this weekend, and I think it was a fantastic performance up till that point. But, you know, next time, Stroll, if you're in a situation like this, you know, just keep your head cool. You did all you could there, buddy. And I think without maybe losing your head, you could have been in the top 7, so you could have gained another couple of places, but the win was out of your hands, unfortunately. So yeah, 7 points to Lance Stroll. Then we come to the final points paying position. I'm going to do these together because they finished together. It was Daniel Ricciardo picking up 1 point for Renault, and Esteban Ocon just outside the points in 11th. So what can we say for Daniel Ricciardo's race? It started off strong and fell away. That's really all you can analyse it with. It was a bit of a poor performance by him. As for Esteban Ocon, he had a fantastic start, got clipped by his teammate as a result of Hamilton, I think it was, wasn't it, going down the inside at turn 1 there. Racing incident, didn't need to be investigated, no one's fault, just one of those things. An unfortunate situation of 3 into 1 won't go. Yeah, for Ricardo though, yeah, an average race. I'm not going to say it was brilliant, I'm going to say it was average. So for that reason, it's going to be 5 points to Daniel Ricciardo. As for Esteban Ocon, did a good recovery there from that spin to get back up there-ish, But we saw a lot of problems for a lot of other drivers that were able to do more, such as Verstappen. You know, he managed, he ended up like 40 odd seconds behind the leader, but he kept it in the points. But I think Ocon had a good recovery. But nonetheless, it's just going to be 5 points for him. It might be slightly cruel again, but like I said, it's a cruel room. I have to get cruel somewhere. And yeah, just 5 points for each of them, really. It wasn't a good day for Renault overall, and that's why I've been a little bit harsh on the pair of them there. Maybe just biding your time a little bit more. I know it's lap 1, turn 1, but he had a good start. But maybe just think about it, Ocon, and he could have had a good result there. And he just backed off a little bit. He'd have lost a couple of places, but at least he wouldn't have been spun round, would he? So yeah, 5 points to Daniel Ricciardo in 10th, and 5 points to Esteban Ocon in 11th. Then we come to Danny Kvyat. Not very often he finishes ahead of his teammate, but this weekend he did. Despite being out-qualified by him, he ended up out-racing him. And these AlphaTauris were so inconspicuous this weekend, I hardly saw anything of them. So forgive me if I've got it really wrong. But they just didn't have the pace. I watched FP1, FP2 and the qualifying, and the car just didn't have the pace in the wet conditions, the dryish conditions with no grip. They just didn't have it, did they, this weekend, unfortunately. And I think 12th and 13th, respectively, for the pair of them, was probably the best they could have get. They maybe could have had more options. I'm not really sure what happened to them, to be honest. But Danny Kvyat finishing ahead of Pierre Gasly. Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? Again, like I said, I don't really know. I don't really know what happened. I'm just analysing it from what I saw of it, which was very little of the AlphaTauris. But because Danny Kvyat finished ahead of Pierre Gasly, despite a poor qualifying performance from Kvyat himself, I'm going to award Danny Kvyat 6 points. I'm going to award Pierre Gasly 5 points. Yeah, again, like I said, might be wrong. I might be totally wrong with those scores, and they might deserve more or less. But overall, I've judged it as I could see. Not in the points for AlphaTauri this weekend, which is a shame for the pair of those, especially when, as I mentioned, Ferrari scored so many. And yeah, just a bit of an average weekend finishing in those positions, not in the points. So yeah, 6 points to Kvyat, 5 points to Gasly. And then we come to the bottle job. You spin me right round, baby. Right. Oh, no, hang on, that's meant to be Sebastian Vettel's song, isn't it? But it was very much Valtteri Bottas' song, wasn't it? What a bottle job. Absolute nightmare, wasn't it? He spun at the first turn, not his fault. I'm not denying him that one. He can have that one for free. He can have that free spin there. He was avoiding Ocon. Without that, he'd have hit him. So yeah, he'd have been out straight away. Although having said that, it'd have probably been better if he'd have hit Ocon and crashed out of the race, because we wouldn't have seen how embarrassing his race would have gone. We had 2 spins at turn 2 at the same place, exactly the same place, did it twice. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me kind of situation there. The pair of... It's just pathetic. We had a spin at turn 4, I think it was. We had further contact with Ocon as well on the same lap one after he got it together again. They were both obviously on track together. He tried lunging up the inside of Ocon at turn 9. Hit him and both spun again. It was pathetic, wasn't it? He got lapped. Wow. Wow, what a pathetic race. I don't know why he kept going. I know you've got to retire a car for having a proper reasoning, but my God, I think if they'd have just radioed FA, hang on, can we box him because he's shite? I think FA would have gone, yeah, get him off, he's a danger. He was an absolute hazard out there, wasn't he? He didn't let Hamilton through on blue flags. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic bottle job. Get off. Get off. Just infuriating. Absolutely infuriating. It's moments like these that make me realise why he's the bitch at Mercedes, because this one, it'd have been clear to fight. It'd have been clear to fight and just get up the field as much as you can. We've had a shit qualifying. Go, go, go. And he didn't. He went back and fell off several times. Pathetic. So for that reason, it's going to be minus 8 million to Valtteri Bottas. It can get off. I don't want to disqualify him because that's an easy way out. You know when people say, oh, give him the death penalty for murdering people? No, let him be fucking tortured first. That's what it's like on this Cruel Room series. I could disqualify him for the easy option out, but I want to rant about him and tell him how bad he is and then give him a really bad score. So minus 8 million for Valtteri Bottas. Then we come to Kimi Raikkonen, the man of the Saturday. Another impressive performance by both AlphaTauri drivers, actually. But here he is, sadly languishing down in 15th place. Again, I didn't see what went wrong with them. Initially a great start. Both Alfa Romeos held position, it seemed. But then it just went wrong, didn't it? They just went wayward, they went down the order. I think they tried something slightly different with the tyre strategy and it just didn't work out. I think it was very much like a Lance Stroll moment, to be honest. And yeah, I can't really score him for the race, unfortunately. I mean, I'm gonna, because I'm thinking that, yeah, it was probably an average performance, but we saw what he was capable of at Portimao, and I was thinking a repeat of that with these wet conditions, it just wasn't to be, was it? The one lap pace the Alfa Romeo had over a race distance, it just crumbled. So, P15 for Kimi Raikkonen. I'm going to award him 6 points, and that is mainly for the qualifying, because that was a phenomenal qualifying effort. In the race was a bit difficult to judge, but sadly qualifying doesn't bring the points, does it? And it was very much an average race this weekend. So 6 points to Kimi Raikkonen. And then we come to George Russell, taking his front wing off in the pit lane whilst doing reconnaissance laps before lining up on the grid before the race had even started. George, come on, man. And then in the race, saw nothing of the Williams. Well, we saw plenty of Latifi, but we'll get to him. Yeah, but George saw nothing of him really in the race, but was languishing down there. Got as high as 11th, to be fair to him, on a different strategy, an alternate strategy by the Williams pairing. And that was about it, really. But we didn't see him there. We just sort of knew he was there. And then tumbled down the order, and that was that. So, yeah, George Russell, 4 points for you. Yeah, I'm not... Yeah, just slightly below average, I'm afraid, because you crashed before the race started. Whoops. Then we come to K-Mag, and my heart bled for K-Mag. I'm not going to lie, it was an emotional time for me. When he hadn't put his wheel on right in the pit stop, and he was running just on the cusp of points, wasn't he? It was very much in that Russell gaggle, and he was running 11th. He just lost out to 10th. I think it was Leclerc that overtook him for that 10th place. Or certainly Vettel, wasn't it? It was one of the Ferraris. But nonetheless, he lost out, just came into the pits, didn't put the wheel on right and lost 2 laps. And that was his race over. Thankfully, they managed to get him back out into the race. But what a shame. What a shame. Gutted for him. Gutted for him. I think he could have maybe got the points there, you know. I think he could have just maybe scraped a point or two. If not, it'd have been a decent result. So it's going to be 7 points for Kevin Magnussen, and it's going to be worth mentioning as well that he completely backed off during those double yellow flag sections for Latifi's spin in qualifying, and that cost him getting through into Q2. The other drivers that didn't do it were suitably penalised, but nonetheless, shame, wasn't it? It could have just disobeyed him and fought it afterwards, like he said. So yeah, there needs to be some kind of ruling on that. Double wave yellow, as he had thought it was abandon your lap, and apparently it is. So yeah, fair play to K-Mag for that, abandoning his lap, and then to come through the field, nearly get a point. Maybe a bit of a stretch that, but nonetheless an impressive race. And then he lost his race thanks to a wheel nut issue, but they did get him back out. So there you go, 7 points to Kevin Magnussen. Then we come to the retirements, and as mentioned, I didn't even realise Grosjean had retired, but he had, and I don't know when that happened. So I apologise for that completely. I missed it. I completely missed it. But what could be said for Grosjean's race prior to that? Not a lot, because if I didn't know he'd retired, then I didn't really know where he was on the track, did I? So it was a lonely weekend by Grosjean. I think he had one half spin during the race. I think I remember seeing a Haas off at least. Yeah. So just a bit of a shame, really, for Grosjean. A lonely weekend for the Haas pairing, really. And could have been what could have been again for them, but not to worry. One of those things. So for Roman Grosjean, outpaced by Kevin Magnussen, outraced by Kevin Magnussen up to a point anyway, and then I didn't see him retire. It's going to be middle of the road, 5 points. If I didn't see you, you've done an average race. So 5 points to Roman Grosjean. Then we come to Nicholas Latifi. You spin me right round. Oh no, that's still meant to be safe for Vettel, isn't it? but no, he had a lot of spins again, didn't he? Yeah, just a lot of spins once again, and poor performance. I think he nearly got lapped by Russell at one point. I think that's probably just before they pulled him in. He was doing crap anyway. No matter what happened, he was doing crap. So for Nicholas Latifi, it's minus 10 points. It's minus 10. I can't award points for that, can I? He was firmly at the back, was spinning everywhere, and I think the only person more dangerous than him was Bottas. So yeah, minus 10 points for Nicholas Latifi. And then last but by no means least, it's Antonio Giovinazzi. The Italian stallion, once again, an impressive performance. His first time ever in Q3, as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm... No, he did have it last year, didn't he? He did get in Q3 last year. But nonetheless, his first Q3 appearance this year, fantastic effort. We thought, here we go. I mean, he lined up 10th, so he was at the back, but not to worry. You know, he got into it, he had a go, didn't he? And then in the race, it just kind of all unfolded it again, didn't it? Off the line, and at the start, he held his position, dropped down to around 11th, and then he broke down. And that was that. He did do similar to what George Russell did, as in he spun and clipped his front wing, but he was able to get to the grid, whereas George had to start in the pit lane. So yeah, unfortunate there, really. I want to dock points for it, but I really like Antonio, so I'm not gonna. I'm gonna show my cruel room bias there and not knock points off. George Russell I did, but after you come from a weekend of crashing behind a safety car, then taking your front wing off on a reconnaissance lap, it's yet another thing that Grosjean's done that you've now done. Whereas Giovinazzi's not crashed behind a safety car yet, has he? So maybe if he does that next weekend, I will knock points off. But nonetheless, Antonio Giovinazzi, I'm going to give him the same score as Raikkonen. It's going to be 6 points. His race was unravelling once again before he had a mechanical breakdown in the end. And a bit of a shame there to see. So, yeah, just 6 points to Antonio. So there you go, guys. That was the runners and riders of the Istanbul Grand Prix, the Turkish Grand Prix. What a fantastic weekend it was. I'd love to see this circuit remain on the calendar. It's to be confirmed at the minute, isn't it? Now Vietnam's been thrown out for corruption. Who would have thought that in F1, eh? So, as always, the points are up on the screen now. Thank you, as always, to Matthew D'Souza for doing these scores. If it wasn't for him, this series would be even more pointless than it already is. So take a look. Where's your favourite runners and riders? It's tight at the top, but there's one breakaway winner still. And it's very, very close for second down, isn't it, really? There's a lot of drivers in the mix, and a particularly good weekend could throw them right back up to the top of that leaderboard. So, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I look forward to seeing you next time for Bahrain. See you then. Much love.